As the only natural satellite orbiting our planet, the Moon remains a familiar but mysterious celestial body. The first human-made satellite to orbit the Moon was launched in 1959, and over the past 60 years, many countries, including the former Soviet Union, the US, and China, have conducted many lunar missions, but no country has gone to the Moon's South Pole. This August, India became the first country to do so. So how significant is the Chandrayaan-3 mission for India and global space exploration? And what's behind the mission's success? Today, we are very happy to be joined by Mr. Srijan Pal Singh, a scientist, entrepreneur, and advisor to the 11th Indian President Abdul Kalam, and Dr. Bernard Foing, the director of the International Lunar Exploration Working Group, and also Dr. Yuguang, the vice chair of International Astronautical Federation's Space Transportation Committee. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. So let's start with Mr. Srijan Pal Singh. Sir, India became the fourth country in the world to land a spacecraft on the Moon, and importantly, the first to land a spacecraft on the Moon's South Pole. So after landing, the rover has traveled over 100 meters and is now in a sleep mode. So what are the tasks the lander is expected to complete, and over what period of time? And what is the significance of this lunar mission for India's space exploration more broadly?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for having me here. It's wonderful to join with all of the dignitaries and experts out here. So Chandrayaan essentially means something which flies to the moon. So Chandrayaan-1, which we did it in 2008, and it was just an orbiter with an impactor. In Chandrayaan-2, when we did it in 2019, we managed to put another orbiter, the second orbiter, but when we were landing, we were unsuccessful. We were landing at the southern polar region. Then we did Chandrayaan-3 in another 4 years, and we successfully landed there. Now, India could have chosen to land at the equatorial region of Moon, and we would have scored a point that we've also landed on the Moon. That would have been easy. But we chose a difficult target. The reason we did that is because the southern pole of the Moon is where there are a lot of shadow areas which have been frozen for millions of years. So we might have found water there. What we're looking for is hydrogen and water out there. That's our primary objective. So, and it's a global mission. It's not just for India. If we find water, it's for the whole world, for the entire human community, and not just for India. So we decided to do this difficult task again, and this time we succeeded. So this is the genesis of why did we go to the southern pole. Now, in terms of missions, it was a beautiful mission. The whole world has followed it. We landed perfectly. Our rover, which is called Pragyan. Pragyan means knowledge and wisdom in Hindi. So our rover gathered a lot of knowledge as well. We were also able to find out in our rover, we had equipment to analyze the lunar regolith, the soil of Moon. And we found out sulfur, we found oxygen, we found calcium, we found aluminium, and we did it through 2 different experiments, an X-ray spectrometer and a laser-based spectrograph. So 2 equipments we used. Now, all this was done 100% successfully. Then we did one bonus mission. So it went beyond the 100%. Just as we were putting Pragyan, the rover, and Vikram, the lander, to sleep, just a few hours before that, we did a hop experiment. So India, in the next following missions, wants to do a return, a sample return. The next mission would be like that. So what we did was that we took our rover, it had some fuel remaining, and we made it take off about 40 centimeters, and then go horizontally 40 centimeters, and then land again. So we did 2 landings, not 1, on the southern pole within a matter of 14 days. So it's globally a very important mission, because now we have explored the South Pole for the whole world, for whole humanity.
So Dr. Bernard, you have worked with the India Space Research Organization on the previous lunar missions. So how would you describe the advances in India's space technologies since the country sent a probe into the Moon's orbit in 2008? And what do you attribute this progress to do?
Thank you very much. So welcome from the Moon. So I'm Bernard Foing, and I have been working at the European Space Agency, where I was the lead of the first mission to the moon. We launched in 2003, Smart One, the first of the millennium. And then I had the opportunity already there to collaborate with ISRO and colleagues. And we have seen really a very strong motivation, professionalism, and also organization of ISRO together with the community of scientists and also a lot of international collaborators for this mission with financial resources, which are also spent very responsibly. Also the technical and also the management and really the spirit of the ISRO teams and their partners have been really exceptional. And I think we can say that it can serve to deliver various benefits to the Indian people, but also the world. And this is a very important milestone also for the next step. We have created an international lunar exploration community. For us, after the orbiters, we have the robotic lander that can work in a coordinated way, like a robotic village. But then we'll have also some humans on the surface of the moon. There are some that will be brought within the Artemis program, but also with the International Lunar Research Station. We'll have some outposts. We'll want to establish also permanent moon base. So the knowledge now the Chandrayaan-3 teams provide some of this progress in science, in technology, in resource mapping, but also in how you put together human skills to their excellence to achieve these very difficult goals. So for this, an historical milestone and a really big congratulations to the ISRO team and their partners.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Foing. Let's turn to Mr. Yang Yuguang. So we know that you have been watching the Indian space mission very closely. So what impressed you most during this mission, and why is the South Pole such a significant territory for space exploration?
Congratulations to my colleagues in ISRO, especially that this program is led by Dr. S. Manas, the president or chairman of the ISRO, and he is also my colleague in space transportation of the International Astronautical Federation. So great congratulations to their team. And second, as you mentioned, this is a very great mission and have great achievements. The first lander near the South Pole. So this is really meaningful for all of us, for the human being and for our space sector. You see that in the future, maybe several decades later, the moon can be an outpost of human being to produce the propellants on the lunar surface because the gravity is much lower than the Earth. So it will be probably much cheaper than bring the propellant from the Earth. From the engineering goal or from the scientific research purposes, the South Pole is the ideal place for human beings to set up permanent base there. Not only that's Dr. Foing and I also we are members of the Moon Village Association. So we hope that we can work together for all space capable nations to work together to promote this procedure, and we contribute to the human being for the change from the exploration era to the exploitation era to set up. But first thing first, we should set up a permanent base near the South Pole. So that is the reason why all these space capable nations, not only India, but also China, US, and other countries plan to first land near the South Pole and set up a base there.
And now let's turn to Mr. Singh again. So India, after the Chandrayaan-3 mission, India also launched a solar observation satellite, Aditya-L1. So can you tell us more about this satellite, and what about India's future space missions? Is India planning more crewed missions in the future?
When we successfully landed on 23rd of August, 2023, the Prime Minister of our nation was at the BRICS summit in South Africa, and he said something. He said that our space quest is based on Vishwa Kalyan and Vishwa Mitra, which means our space mission is based on being friends to the world, right? And for the benefit of humanity as a whole. So this is the genesis of our space mission. India was a poor country when it started off its space mission in 1960s. And our reason of doing it was, as I think Dr. Yang was pointing out, it was not a space race, it was not conflict. It was based purely on saving our fishermen who were getting lost in ocean and helping our farmers who were always at the mercy of the monsoon weather. That's how our space mission began. It was frugal, it was low cost, and it was for humanity's benefit. Aditya L1 is also an example of such space mission. Aditya L1, Aditya in Hindi, in the Indian language, it means sun. So it's sun mission. We would like to study the sun's X-ray spectrum. We have equipment on board. And we want to, understand the sun better so that we can understand how the global climate change happens because of the sun. The Chandrayaan-3 mission was done in $70 million, which is a fraction of a cost of what any other mission would have costed. So this is one of our core strengths going forward. Of course, in the future, beyond Aditya L1, we are coming up within this year, we'll come up with something called the ExpoSat. The ExpoSat will basically study X-rays from 50 brightest spots in our universe, which are pulsars, which may be black hole binaries, supernovas, and so on. This will happen in 2023. Also in 2023, this year, in October, we are launching the first version of our Gaganyaan, which is India's manned mission. It's the beginning of India's manned mission into space. Now, this is still a prototype, as in only a humanoid will go there. Humans are still not going there. Maybe next year or year after next, we will do that. By the middle of next decade, India also plans to launch its own space station in, of course, collaboration with global countries. And that is something, a mission on the cards. So these are the future things. I'm sure many more things will happen as we go on. India is still one of the best nations to be launching satellites. It's now becoming a big business in India. It's an economic activity. Our private sector has opened up. For the first time, Indian private companies are now getting into the business of manufacturing satellites, and eventually they want to get into launching satellites. A lot of equity investments have happened in those areas from all over the world. Those companies are rising stars in the Indian startup ecosystem. And we hope to see that in the next few years, we can also collaborate with more and more countries. For example, the Chandrayaan-4 mission we are doing with Japan. And we are looking at how do we launch that and also bring back some samples from the moon, just like China. So we want to do that also. So all those missions are very much on the cards.
I was really impressed by the low cost and also for the humanity of the Indian mission. So now let's turn to Mr. Yang Yuguang. So what do you think about the India's lunar missions, and how does it inspire the space explorations to other countries?
Well, exactly. You see that both China and India are developing countries. We are the biggest developing countries. So, as Dr. Singh has already mentioned, it is very important to have a low-cost mission, as India has done this time in Chandrayaan-3 mission. Also, China had did this before. You see that the efficiency, as I mentioned, during the second tide is always a very important factor to consider. For instance, for the Chang'e 3 mission, our first orbiter of the moon, we utilized our Dongfang Hong 3 satellite bus to only small change and small improvements we done on this and change that from a satellite on geosynchronous orbit to the lunar probe. So we only spend a small amount of money to achieve the goal of become a country who can put the orbiter around the moon. So this is the first mission, and also, you know that every time we have a mission, either for mastering the technology of orbiting the moon, landing on the moon, or sample back from the moon, we always have a backup. But for instance, originally the Chang'e 2 is a backup of Chang'e 1. The Chang'e 4 is a backup of Chang'e 3, and also in the future, originally the Chang'e 6 is a backup of Chang'e 5. But after the successful mission of the Chang'e 1, 3, and 5, we changed the goal to have a maximum return on scientific research. We hope that in the future, we have a coordination mechanism for all these countries, China, Japan, India, and also European countries, to get more samples from different places, so we can have more scientific returns on the to promote the recognition and the knowledge of human being on the lunar exploration. And as we've already discussed, our Indian colleagues have very great experience on the international cooperation to promote these kind of schemes. For China, also we have similar experience. For instance, we also get support from and help from the European side. They utilize the ground stations to get more to help us to become more easier to get the connection between the spacecraft and our ground stations, either for our lunar missions or the manned space programs. We also have our ground station in Argentina and Chile. So also these are international corporations. Moreover, almost all these countries, including China and India, and also other countries, maybe the spacecraft bus is developed by itself, but always we have the scientific research payload from other countries. So I believe that this has also become an inevitable trend for all these capable nations to get more or to put this to the maximum extent for human beings to get more knowledge as possible for us.
Mr. Singh, you just mentioned about the Chandrayaan-4 mission that's cooperating with Japan. And also, so what do you think are the main opportunities as well as challenges for India's future space missions?
Right. I'll begin with the challenges first. I think in India's space mission, the elephant in the room is our launch vehicles. So India is currently using, for example, in Chandrayaan, we are using the LVM Mark III, the launch vehicle Mark III, LVM-3, which is a GSLV kind of a satellite launch vehicle. And the launch vehicle which we are using, if I compare it, we have about a thrust of somewhere around 5,000 plus kilonewtons. If you compare it with Saturn V, it's about 1/6 of that. So Saturn V was upwards of 30,000 kilonewtons. We are at somewhere 5,000 kilonewtons. So we are currently facing the crunch of making better and more powerful launch vehicles. So those rockets have to be improved. India is working on something called the Next Generation Launch Vehicle, which is called the NGLV, which will bring us at the same level as the Long March 5. So we'll be around 10,000 kilonewtons in our thrust capability. But we are still far away from the NASA's SLS, which is way beyond the current standard which we are operating. That is why we took so much time for taking our Chandrayaan-3 from Earth to Moon. That will be complicated if we are looking at a system where we can take humans and bring them back and all that stuff which we want to do. It's riskier and it's going to take more time. And if we want to bring down the launch cost even further in the range of $100 per kilogram or so, we have to focus on RLV, which is reusable launch vehicles, where parts of a rocket system can be reused so that the cost can be brought down. India is working on that mission as well. I think more money has to be pumped into and more research has to be given into it, and maybe more collaborations can be brought into it. Do understand that the entire budget of ISRO, India's space agency, is about $1.5 billion a year, which is a fraction of a cost. It's nothing compared to other space agencies. India still needs to do a lot more. And I'm expecting that in the next budget of the Indian government, there'll be far more allocation in space than what it has seen so far. The other challenge which India is going to face once we start expanding our space industry would be people. While Indians are generating more engineers, perhaps, India and China are probably the highest engineers coming out of the countries, but we still need to have a dedicated curriculum for space. Most of our engineers who come out of colleges are not ready for space sector. It takes a lot of training for them to become ready for that. I think the education institutions in India have to be, tailored so that space-ready engineers are coming out. That has to be done. Those are the two critical challenges I think we have to take. Now, in terms of opportunities, endless opportunities. I mean, space is a sector which is hundreds of $1 billion. If nothing short, $600 billion is going to be there. The moon itself is $1 trillion or so entity. Now we want to go to the moon again, and we will keep going to the moon now with collaborations from Japan and so on. India is also setting up its own, as I mentioned, its own space station. We want to do that. That is going to happen in the next decade. I think, and there are other things which we can do, especially with China. For example, the ILRS, the International Lunar Station, which we are setting up with the Roscosmos, Chinese Space Agency, and I saw Pakistan and South Africa are also there. That is great. But I think it's a good position now for India and China to work together. One of the things I've been advocating for a long time, and many leaders in India would say, is an Asian Space Center. Just like the European Space Agency is there, we should have Asian Space Agency. India and China should collaborate. If half of the population is in India and China, of the global, the global population, half of it is in India and China. I think it's a great opportunity. I know that India and China have its own political differences, their conflicts, all those things that we fought wars. But I think space is a sector where we could find our common humanity. India and China could be together and do great for the entire humankind by doing things together in space. In case of Japan, what we are doing is that they are making the rover. We are going to make the launcher. Like that, India needs collaborations in thrusters, the launch vehicles. I think China and even the US has such great launch vehicles. We need to work on better rovers. We have mastered a little bit about landing and landers and all, so we can bring that skill into the game. We can do cost cutting on everything. Cost optimization is our core skill. All those things we can bring together. I think each country has to identify what is its core strength and work together on its core strength. When we go to space, our passport will start reading not the country, but also the planet. And I think we have to live with that global vision, that one day we will live on other planets and we will be collectively known as Earth. And I think the mission to begin it is now.
Very interesting proposal of building an Asian space agency. So Dr. Yang Yuguang, can you tell us more about the International Lunar Research Station Mr. Singh just mentioned? Because China is now planning to build such an international lunar research station around 2030, along with other countries. So can you tell us more about this international cooperation projects?
Of course, Dr. Singh's proposal is really great for all of us, for the benefit of not only the space sector, but of a whole human being. This is really great. You see that China's international lunar research station welcome all countries, no exceptions, to participate. Just maybe around 2 days before, South Africa has already formally announced that they will join our International Lunar Research Station. As we've already discussed, our the research station will located in the South Pole regions, and also we've already made good preparations for this station. So you see that in several years later, we will launch our Chang'e 7 mission. Absolutely, it will be landed near the South Pole. And it will demonstrate some necessary technologies for setting up our station. And also the Chang'e 8 mission will not only demonstrate this technology, but also will have some attempt technically on the on-site resource utilization. This is also very important. You see that to get the lessons from as I mentioned, the first tide of the lunar exploration, sustainable or economical activities is very necessary. So reducing the cost is very, very critical for all our space agencies, including ISRO, NASA, ESA, and also China National Space Agency. So in the future, to utilize not only the water and also the regless and other resources on the lunar surface, it will be a great measure for all of us to reduce the cost to setting up these stations. Of course, our station will first be a robotic one in the future, but I believe that sooner or later in the future, we will have our. So all these works, including our robotic stations on the lunar surface, and in the future, the manned space station on the lunar surface will be maybe the preparation work for the for getting or collecting the helium-3. But of course, maybe this will happen maybe half a century later. But before that, that's not only that's utilizing the regless and water on the lunar surface. Some of our scientists, including those in the Beihang University, are also studying to the planting in the lunar surface of creating vegetables or other crops. So this is also, I believe, that's very necessary for all of us. So as we have already mentioned, these are the preparation to make the moon an outpost of human being in the future. And also the human being will not recognize Mars as its final terminal. In the future, we will go deeper and beyond the Mars, and in the future, maybe to the Galileo moons of the Jupiter, such as human missions to Callisto and go back to the Earth. So these are the future visions of all of us. And the first thing first, we should set up a base on the lunar surface.
we know that the international collaboration is important, but due to different reasons, it's not easy for the international collaborations, especially in the space sector. So what are your advices for the international collaboration among different countries?
Yeah, so I have really worked my whole career as diplomat for space, international cooperation between countries that are in competition. And so for that, in Europe, we are part of the International Space Station. And I mentioned we are still working together now for the moon. Europe is, we have done Smart One very fast, but in the meantime, in 20 years, we have not launched a mission to the moon. So we have not been as efficient as China and India. So I think we have to learn from you how you are efficient. Countries will participate and we will exchange also some good opportunities, like we had India that provided opportunity to fly 3 of our European instruments on Srijan 1 to share the analysis of data. So clearly now we have to find a way to be more proactive in this international cooperation at various levels, data level, the payload, human space flight. And so we have also to advise, all this ecosystem to find a way to have a benefit for everybody, and in particular for our society and for the future.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Foing. And very last question for Mr. Singh. Mr. Yang just mentioned about China's international lunar exploration projects. So what is your take on the China's international lunar cooperation project? Do you know India's projects to work with China in the future? Do you think the countries can work together on the international space exploration projects?
I think Dr. Yang has beautifully explained about the International Lunar Research Station and the project of China. So I don't need to dwell into that. But I think I congratulate China and other countries who have come together for this great human mission. And I believe that it's a humanities mission. It's not just Chinese mission or Russian mission or Indian mission, anybody's mission. Because many countries with China is collaborating in the ILRS. Everybody wants to go to space, and it's our duty as nations who are spacefaring. I think we are duty bound to take those nations who are yet to go into space. It's our role. It's not something which is our privilege. It is a responsibility for us. And I think India now, having gone with its Chandrayaan mission to the moon, Chandrayaan 4 also now planned with Japan. I think in the future, Chandrayaan 5, 6, 7, 8, all these missions and the Chang'e missions, they should collaborate now. I think it's high time we let go of this country, that country. It's a humanities mission. Our quest, for example, Dr. Yang was telling about helium-3. There's how much helium-3, according to one estimate, if you bring out all the helium-3 from the moon back to Earth, and in future you can create energy from it, a country like India will get energy for 40,000 years. So you can imagine the whole world can benefit from it. It's a cheap source. The launches which we do to other planets or other satellites across the space, they'll be phenomenal things. We will be learned. If history, we want history to remember us, in 100 years, we will be remembered for dissolving the boundaries of nations to go collectively into space. And I am a great advocate that India should collaborate with China, and China should collaborate with India, and ESA should also collaborate, and NASA should also collaborate, and private companies should also come together. And every nation which aspires to be in space should be welcome to create a collective mission of humankind into space. We need to go to space not just for energy or money. It's a humankind's exploration quest. The human mind wants to explore new things. And it's survival tactics. We are on this planet. It's a beautiful planet, but we don't know how long this planet will last. If we want to make our human race, our human species, endless in time, we have to go to distances which are far beyond, and we have to go this distance collectively. So I think that's my message, and I hope that in future we'll collaborate with China's Lunar Research Station, and China will collaborate with our Chandrayaan missions, and we will all do something great for the rest of humanity.
It's a very good point. We know that all humanity will benefit from these space exploration missions. And over the next few years, more lunar crewed missions and lunar sample missions are expected. And these missions will have a lot of challenges and also difficulties. But one thing for sure is that these missions will help us better understand our moon and the universe we live in. So thank you so much for your time, gentlemen, and for your insight, analysis, and discussions. And see you next time.